My fiance announced, I'm keeping my options open, since I could do so much better than him. Then called me pathetic for caring. Stop being such a controlling loser. So I moved out, canceled everything, and let her have all the options she craved, but now she is begging. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. Hey everyone, what's up? So this went down about 3 weeks ago, and I'm still processing the whole thing. Never thought I'd be writing relationship drama on Reddit, but here we are, I guess. I, 33 male, work as a residential contractor. Decks, kitchen remodels, stuff like that. After a day of dealing with homeowners who think they know more about construction than I do, all I want is a quiet evening and a cold Coke. Sophie, 29 female, my ex-fiancé, is pretty much my total opposite. She's an influencer with 85,000 followers, always posting outfits, coffee runs, and those day-in-my-life videos where nothing really happens, but still rack up views. Most weekends she's off at influencer events, taking stage photos with people pretending to sip smoothies and talk about nothing. We'd been together 2 years, moved in together after about 6 months when her lease was up and she was broke. I proposed 5 months ago during this quiet weekend getaway. Nothing fancy, just us at this cabin by a lake I found on Airbnb. She said yes immediately and started crying. The whole thing. It was actually really nice and felt genuine, you know? Then she immediately started planning this wedding that's been eating up my savings ever since. Venue deposit, her dress, which cost more than my truck payment, caterer, photographer. I've been covering most of it since her influencer income is pretty hit or miss. The wedding was supposed to be in 6 months, and honestly, I was looking forward to it. Then last Tuesday happened and everything changed. I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone. Sophie was next to me editing some video on her laptop, headphones in, completely absorbed in whatever content she was putting together. I ended up on Instagram somehow. Don't even remember how, I barely use it, and saw she'd posted a new selfie maybe an hour earlier. It was typical Sophie content. Good lighting, perfect angle, some caption about embracing your authentic self, or some other buzzword nonsense. Nothing unusual there. But then I started reading the comments like an idiot, and one caught my eye. Some guy named Tyler Fitness 22 had commented, "Are you taken?" Pretty standard thirsty dude comment, right? The kind of thing that gets posted on every attractive woman's photos. I was about to scroll past when I saw Sophie had replied to it, keeping my options open. I stared at that comment for like a full minute. Read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't seeing things wrong. Keeping her options open, with a kissy face emoji, in response to a guy asking if she was single. I looked over at Sophie, still editing her video, completely unaware that I was having an internal crisis 2 feet away from her. The engagement ring I'd saved for months to buy was sitting on her nightstand, while she told the internet she was keeping her options open. Maybe I was overthinking it, you know? Maybe it was some kind of joke I didn't understand, or one of those influencer things where you say stuff for engagement that doesn't actually mean anything. But it sure didn't look like a joke to me. It looked pretty straightforward. Guy asks if she's available. She says she's keeping her options open. I couldn't sleep after that. Just kept thinking about how casual her response was. How quickly she must have typed it. Like it was the most natural thing in the world to tell random men she was available while her fiancé was lying right next to her. The more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. This wasn't some abstract social media strategy thing. This was my fiancé actively encouraging other men to think they had a shot with her, while wearing my ring, while planning our wedding, while I was literally in the same bed. I started thinking about other stuff too. How she never really posted about being engaged unless it was sponsored content with wedding vendors. How she'd get all these flirty comments from guys and never shut them down. How whenever I brought up anything about her social media behavior, she'd act like I was being controlling or didn't understand her career. But this felt different. This wasn't about understanding her career. This was about basic respect. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized this probably wasn't the first time something like this had happened. I just hadn't been paying attention before. By morning, I knew I had to say something. This wasn't the kind of thing I could just ignore and hope it went away. We were supposed to get married in 6 months. If we couldn't have honest conversations about boundaries and respect now, what was the point? I spent most of my workday that Wednesday thinking about how to bring it up without starting a huge fight. I was working on this deck renovation in Westfield, trying to focus on getting the joist level, but my mind kept drifting back to that comment and what it meant about how Sophie saw our relationship. Finally, around lunch, I couldn't take it anymore and called my best friend Daniel. We've known each other since high school, and he's one of those straight shooter types who'll tell you exactly what he thinks, whether you want to hear it or not. Quick question, I said when he picked up. If your girl posted on Instagram and some random dude asked if she was taken, what would be a normal response? Uh, Probably yes, or happily taken, or just ignoring it completely. Why? I read him Sophie's comment word for word. There was silence for like 10 seconds. Bro, what the hell? Am I being too sensitive about this? She's always saying stuff online that doesn't really mean anything. Nah, man, that's messed up. That's not something someone who's engaged says, even if it's just for likes or whatever. That's actively encouraging dudes to think they have a shot. Hearing Daniel say it confirmed what I already knew in my gut. This wasn't normal behavior for someone in a committed relationship, let alone someone who was engaged. This was Sophie telling the world she was available while planning a wedding with me. Maybe I should talk to her about it, I said. Yeah, definitely. But Ethan, if she doesn't see why that's wrong, you might have bigger problems than just one comment. That hit me hard because I knew he was probably right. This wasn't really about Tyler Fitness 22 or even about Instagram. This was about whether Sophie respected our relationship enough to not actively undermine it for social media clout. I spent the rest of the day dreading the conversation I knew we needed to have. The next day, I get home from work around 6. Sophie's already there. When she was finally done with her usual routine, I suggested we make dinner together. She was in a good mood, talking about how the skincare brand might want to do a longer partnership if this post performed well. I figured it was as good a time as any to bring up the comment situation. We were in the kitchen. I was trying to work up the courage to start the conversation when she mentioned something about needing to post more engaging content to boost her algorithm performance. Perfect opening. Speaking of engaging content, I said, trying to keep my tone casual, I saw that comment you replied to last night. The guy asking if you were taken? She didn't even look up from the cutting board. Which one? I get those constantly. You told him you were keeping your options open. She paused and glanced at me with this annoyed expression. Oh, that. Yeah, what about it? What about it? We're engaged, Sophie. Why would you tell some random guy you're keeping your options open? She actually rolled her eyes. So? It doesn't mean anything. It's a joke. A joke? How is telling another man you're available funny? God, you're so literal about everything. It's just a comment. Who cares? That's when I realized she genuinely didn't see the problem. I care. You're wearing my ring while telling other men you're available. And? So what if I am? It's not real, Ethan. None of this online stuff is real. Stop being so dramatic. The woman I was planning to marry had just told me that encouraging other men to hit on her was no big deal because it's not real. Like our relationship was the fake thing. I'm trying to understand why my fiancé thinks it's okay to flirt with other men. That's when she completely lost it. Slammed the knife down on the cutting board. This is what I deal with every day. You getting jealous and possessive over nothing. It's pathetic. Pathetic. That word hit me like a punch. The conversation went downhill from there. She turned it around on me, said I was trying to control her career, called me insecure and controlling. When I pointed out that she never actually mentions being engaged unless it's sponsored content, she got even nastier. You know what your problem is? She said, pointing the knife at me. You're jealous that I have ambitions beyond this little bubble. You can't handle that I'm building something bigger than just being your housewife. This isn't about ambition, Sophie. This is about respect. This is about you being a controlling, insecure man-child who can't handle his fiancé being successful. Man-child. Pathetic. Insecure. Controlling. Every insult felt like a slap. I stood there for a minute just looking at her, trying to figure out when exactly the woman I fell in love with had turned into this person who thought so little of me. When had I become the enemy instead of her partner? I'm going for a walk, I said finally. Good. Maybe while you're out there, you can think about whether you want to be with someone who has goals or if you'd rather find some girl who'll be content to sit around watching TV with you forever. I grabbed my jacket and left. Walked around our neighborhood for 2 hours just trying to process what had happened. She hadn't apologized, hadn't acknowledged that maybe her comment was inappropriate. Instead, she'd attacked me, called me names, and made it clear that she thought I was holding her back from her dreams of Instagram fame. When I got back home, she was in bed scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. Didn't even look up when I came in. That's when I knew this relationship was probably over. The woman I wanted to marry had just shown me exactly what she thought of me and our engagement. I was an obstacle to her social media career. A jealous, pathetic man-child who couldn't handle her success. Well, if that's how she really felt, Maybe it was time to stop being an obstacle. The next couple days after our fight were weird as hell. Sophie acted like nothing happened, still doing her morning routine, still setting up her ring light in our living room. Like calling me pathetic and a man-child was just Tuesday night conversation for her. I started wondering if she even remembered what she'd said to me. But I remembered. Every word was burned into my brain. The way she laughed when I said I was hurt. How she called me controlling for asking for basic respect. The look on her face when she called me pathetic. Like she genuinely meant it. I kept replaying the conversation and realizing how messed up her responses were. Any normal person would have apologized, maybe explained what they meant, tried to reassure their partner. Sophie had done the opposite, doubled down and attacked me for even bringing it up. Then Wednesday, she announced she was going on a work trip, some 3-day influencer retreat at this fancy cabin upstate. A candle company was sponsoring the whole thing, flying out like 20 lifestyle creators to make content about finding inner peace or whatever nonsense they were selling. It's going to be amazing for my brand, she said, while packing her ring light and about 15 different outfits for 3 days. These girls have way bigger followings than me. If I can get on their radar, it could really boost my numbers. She was more excited about this trip than anything wedding related. Spent 2 hours laying out clothes and practicing different poses in our mirror. I helped her carry her bags to the car Friday morning. And I'm not exaggerating. She had more luggage for 3 days than most people take on week-long vacations. Have fun, I said when she kissed me goodbye. Don't work too hard. Oh, please, this isn't work. This is networking disguised as a vacation. The content practically creates itself. As soon as her car disappeared around the corner, I went back inside and sat at our kitchen table. 3 days alone to think without Sophie's constant presence, without her ring light set up in our living room, without the sound of her recording the same sentence 15 times to get the perfect take. For the first time in months, our apartment was quiet. I made some coffee and really started thinking about everything that had happened. Not just the Instagram comment, but the pattern of behavior it represented. How she'd get flirty comments from guys and never shut them down. How she'd act like I was being unreasonable anytime I brought up something that bothered me about her online behavior. I thought about the kitchen conversation and how quickly she'd turned it around on me. How she'd made me feel crazy for wanting my fiancé to not tell other men she was available. How she'd called me names and attacked my character instead of addressing what I was actually saying. I started thinking about our whole relationship differently. How I'd been funding this wedding while she spent her money on camera equipment and clothes for content. How she'd moved in with me when her lease was up because she was broke, but acted like she was doing me a favor. How every conversation about our future somehow became about her brand and her goals and her growth. When had I become just a supporting character in Sophie's Instagram story? Saturday morning, I called in sick to work, which I never do. Told my crew I had food poisoning and needed the day. Then I spent the morning looking up apartments online. Just browsing at first, seeing what was available in my price range. Then I started getting serious about it. Found this one-bedroom place about 20 minutes away. Nothing fancy, but it was available immediately, and I could afford it without Sophie's inconsistent income. The landlord was willing to do a virtual showing since I explained I worked construction and couldn't get there during normal hours. By Saturday afternoon, I'd filled out an application. By Sunday morning, it was approved. I also started thinking about the wedding and how much money I'd already put down for everything. Venue deposit, Sophie's dress, catering, photographer, thousands of dollars for a wedding to someone who thought I was pathetic for wanting basic respect. Sunday afternoon, while Sophie was probably taking photos of herself holding candles in some scenic location, I made a list of every vendor we'd hired. Started looking up their cancellation policies. Most of them were pretty reasonable since we were still 6 months out. I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet, but I wanted to know what my options were, what it would cost me to walk away, versus what it would cost me to marry someone who saw our relationship as an obstacle to her social media success. By Sunday evening, I'd pretty much made up my mind. The 3 days alone had given me clarity I hadn't had when Sophie was around constantly. When you're not dealing with someone's daily drama and demands for attention, you can actually think clearly about whether you want to spend your life with them. The answer was becoming pretty obvious. I spent Sunday night going through our shared stuff, figuring out what was mine versus what was hers. Most of the furniture was stuff she'd bought or that we'd picked out together. But my tools, clothes, books, electronics, all that was clearly mine. I could pack it up and be out in a few hours if I wanted to. Monday morning, Sophie texted me a selfie from the retreat with some message about how the mountain air was giving her such clarity about her goals. The irony wasn't lost on me. We were both getting clarity, just not the kind she was expecting. I texted back, "Looks beautiful, have fun," and went to work. Spent the day framing out a deck edition in Milburn, working with my hands, thinking through everything one more time. By the time I got home Monday evening, I knew what I was going to do. Sophie had shown me exactly who she was and what she thought of me. Time to stop pretending otherwise. She was supposed to be back Tuesday evening. That gave me one more day to get everything sorted out. Time to give Sophie all the options she wanted. Woke up around 6 a.m. even though I didn't set an alarm. Couldn't sleep anyway. Made coffee and sat at our kitchen table one last time, looking around the apartment we'd shared for over a year. Weird how different a place feels when you know you're never coming back. First thing I did was call the wedding venue. Had their number saved in my phone from when we booked it. The coordinator, Jennifer, answered on the second ring. Hi, Jennifer. This is Ethan Miller. We have the December 14th booking. I need to cancel. She went into this whole spiel about how December was their busiest season and how cancellations this late usually forfeit the deposit. I told her I understood, but we needed to cancel anyway. Turned out since we were still 6 months out, we'd only lose about 20% of what we'd paid. Could live with that. Is everything okay? Can we reschedule instead? No, we need to cancel completely. The wedding's off. She got quiet for a second. I'm sorry to hear that. I'll process the cancellation today and get you the refund paperwork. One down. Next was the caterer. Professional, no drama, got most of the money back. The photographer Sophie had pushed for because her aesthetic matched my brand was surprisingly cool about it. Even wished me well. The DJ, florist, all of them. Easy. By 10 a.m., every vendor was canceled. Just a string of calm phone calls letting them know the wedding was off. A few asked if we wanted to reschedule, but I made it clear. We were done. The hardest call was to the bridal shop where Sophie had ordered her dress. Thing cost almost $3,000, and she'd been obsessing over every detail for months. The alterations hadn't started yet since the wedding was still 6 months away, so they agreed to cancel the order and refund most of the deposit. Should we ship the dress if it arrives before we can stop the order? The woman asked. No, just send it back to the designer. We won't be needing it. By noon, I'd systematically dismantled our entire wedding. Every vendor, every deposit, every plan. Got about 70% of our money back, which was way better than I'd expected. The rest was basically a stupidity tax for getting engaged to someone who thought I was pathetic. Then I started on the apartment stuff, called the electric company and removed my name from the account. Did the same with cable and internet. Took my name off the lease. Sophie could figure out how to afford the place on her own, or move somewhere cheaper. Around 1 p.m. I started packing. Wasn't much that was actually mine. Most of the furniture was Sophie's, or stuff we'd bought together that I didn't really care about. My clothes, tools, books, electronics, some kitchen stuff my mom had given me when I moved out years ago. Fit everything into boxes and garbage bags pretty easily. The hardest part was packing up my tools. I've been collecting them for over 10 years. Know every wrench and drill bit. Some of them were gifts from my dad when I first started in construction. Loading them into my truck felt like closing a chapter of my life, but also kind of liberating. 2 hours later, my truck was loaded, and I was ready to go. But first, I had to handle the new apartment situation. Drove over to sign the lease and get the keys. Place was smaller than what Sophie and I had shared, but it was mine. No ring lights, no camera equipment, no constant chatter about engagement rates and brand partnerships. Unloaded my stuff into the new place. Didn't bother arranging anything properly. Just got it inside and off the truck. I'd have plenty of time to set up later. Around 5 p.m., I drove back to the old apartment one last time. Sophie wouldn't be back for a couple hours, but I wanted to do a final walkthrough. Make sure I hadn't forgotten anything important. Walking through those rooms was weird. The living room where Sophie filmed most of her content looked bigger without my stuff in it. Our bedroom felt empty, with just her clothes in the closet. The kitchen where we'd had our fight 3 days earlier looked like a stage set waiting for actors. Before I left, I wrote a note. Kept it simple. Since you're keeping your options open, I'm giving you one. All yours. Left it on the kitchen counter where she'd definitely see it, right next to where we'd had our fight about the Instagram comment. Then I walked out and locked the door behind me. Drove straight to my new place without looking back. Spent the evening setting up my bed and unpacking essentials. Ordered pizza and sat on my floor eating it while scrolling through Reddit. Felt weird being alone after 2 years of constant background noise from Sophie's content creation, but good weird. Peaceful. Around 8 p.m. my phone started buzzing. Sophie was back. I turned it to silent and kept eating pizza. By 9 p.m. she'd called 12 times. I could see the notifications piling up, but I didn't check them. Let her figure out what happened on her own first. An hour later, the texts started coming in. First confused, then panicked, then angry. I read a few just to see her reaction. Why aren't you answering your phone? Is everything okay? Ethan, where are you? Where's all your stuff? I found your note. This is insane. You can't just disappear over one stupid comment. I turned my phone completely off and went to bed. Tomorrow was going to be interesting, but tonight I was sleeping in my own place, making my own decisions, not having to worry about being called controlling or insecure for having normal relationship expectations. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. Sophie wanted to keep her options open. Well, now she had all the options in the world. Every single one of them. Turned my phone back on the next morning at around 8 a.m., and it immediately started buzzing like crazy. Overnight, Sophie had called 47 times. 47. The voicemails were a journey. Started apologetic, got desperate, then turned nasty real quick. Fine. If you want to throw away 2 years over this, that's your problem. My sister thinks you lost your mind. This is psychotic behavior. That last one made me laugh. I was psychotic for not wanting my fiancé to flirt with other men online. Sure, Sophie. The texts were even better. She'd apparently spent most of Tuesday night trying to figure out what happened, then Wednesday morning calling all our vendors to see if they'd heard from me. That's how she found out about the wedding cancellations. You canceled our wedding? Without talking to me? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? I have to explain to everyone why my fiancé disappeared. You're going to pay for this. I'm keeping the ring and you owe me for emotional damages. Classic Sophie. Everything was about how it affected her image and her feelings. Not once did she acknowledge why I might be upset about her behavior. I didn't respond to any of it. Went to work, focused on the Milburn project, came home to my quiet apartment. Felt like I could actually breathe for the first time in months. Thursday, the calls started coming from other people. Her sister Madison texted, asking if I was okay and if I'd had some kind of breakdown. My mom called because Sophie had reached out to her, claiming she was worried about my mental health. Ethan, honey, Sophie says you just vanished without explanation. She's very concerned about you. I'm fine, Mom. Just needed some space from the relationship. Space? Sweetheart, you were planning a wedding. People don't just take space 6 months before their wedding. I kept it vague with my mom. Didn't want to get into the whole story, but made it clear I was safe, and this was my decision. She wasn't happy about it, but agreed to stay out of it. The worst was when my buddy Daniel called Friday morning. Bro, Sophie showed up at my work yesterday asking if I knew where you were. She was crying and saying you'd had some kind of mental breakdown. That pissed me off. Sophie was going around telling people I was mentally unstable because I'd finally stood up for myself. What did you tell her? That if you wanted to talk to her, you'd call her. But man, she seemed really upset. Are you sure you're handling this the right way? Even Daniel was starting to question my methods, which sucked because he'd been the one telling me her behavior was messed up in the first place. Meanwhile, Sophie was posting cryptic Instagram stories about being blindsided by someone's true colors, and when people show you who they really are. Her followers were eating it up, offering support, and asking who had hurt their queen. She was getting more engagement from our breakup than she'd gotten from our engagement. Saturday morning, I was at my new place trying to set up furniture when someone knocked on my door. Loud, aggressive knocking that went on for like 30 seconds straight. I looked through the peephole and there was Sophie. Somehow she'd tracked down my new address. Probably got it from Daniel or figured it out from the lease transfer paperwork. She looked rough. No makeup, hair in a messy bun, wearing sweatpants and one of my old hoodies she'd kept. This was not Instagram Sophie. This was desperate, real-life Sophie. I almost didn't answer, but figured I'd have to deal with this eventually. Might as well get it over with. We need to talk, she said, the second I opened the door. Do we? Yes, we do. This is insane, Ethan. You can't just disappear and cancel our entire life together because of one comment. She pushed past me into my apartment without being invited. Started looking around at my boxes and minimal furniture setup. So this is it? This is what you chose over our relationship? Some sad bachelor pad because you couldn't handle me having a career? This is what I chose over being with someone who thinks I'm pathetic. That stopped her for a second. She sat down on my couch. The only real furniture I'd set up so far. I didn't mean that. I was just angry because you were attacking my work. I wasn't attacking your work, Sophie. I was asking for basic respect. And I said I was sorry about the comment. But instead of talking to me like an adult, you burned our entire relationship down. Do you have any idea what you've put me through this week? Here we go. Everything was about what I'd put her through. Not about her behavior that started this whole thing. You called me pathetic for caring that you told another man you were keeping your options open. What exactly did you expect me to do with that? I expected you to act like a grown man instead of running away like a child. The audacity was incredible. She was sitting in my apartment calling me a child for leaving a relationship where she'd made it clear she didn't respect me. That's when the tears started. Not the pretty single tear thing from movies, but full-on sobbing. I love you, Ethan. I want to marry you. That comment didn't mean anything. I was just trying to grow my following. I'll change my social media strategy if that's what you want. It's not about your social media strategy. It's about who you are as a person. What's that supposed to mean? It means when I tried to have an honest conversation about something that hurt me, you laughed at me and called me names. That's who you are, Sophie. Someone who thinks my feelings are inconvenient to your goals. She stayed for another hour, cycling between tears, anger, and promises to change. Kept saying she'd delete Instagram entirely if that's what it took, which showed she still didn't understand the real problem. Finally, I told her she needed to leave. She begged for another chance, said we could go to couples therapy, said she'd do anything to fix this. The time to fix this was when I brought it up in our kitchen. You chose to call me pathetic instead. That was a week ago. She's emailed me twice since then. Long rambling messages about how she's learned so much about herself in our relationship. I read the first one out of curiosity, but deleted the second without opening it. Haven't heard from her then. Her Instagram has become this whole healing journey narrative. Posts about toxic relationships and recognizing red flags in partners. Her followers are loving it. She's probably gained more engagement from our breakup than our entire relationship generated. The irony isn't lost on me that she's building her brand off, painting me as the toxic one, while conveniently leaving out the part where she told other men she was available. But honestly, I'm good with it. Let her tell whatever story she needs to tell. I know the truth, and more importantly, I know I made the right choice. So it's been about 3 weeks since Sophie showed up at my apartment doing her whole crying routine. I figured that was the end of it. She'd get the message that I wasn't coming back and move on with her life. Wrong. Yesterday around 6 p.m., I was cleaning up after work when my phone rang. Number I didn't recognize, but it was local, so I figured it might be a potential client. Hello? Ethan? This is Robert, Sophie's father. My stomach dropped. I'd met Sophie's parents maybe 4 times in 2 years. They lived about 2 hours away and weren't really involved in our day-to-day life. We need to talk. Linda and I would like to meet with you tomorrow if possible. The way he said it, formal, serious, made it clear this wasn't a request. After some back and forth about how this was all just a misunderstanding that could be worked out, I agreed to meet them for coffee. 1 hour, that's it. This morning I showed up at this diner halfway between our towns. Robert and Linda were already there, sitting in a corner booth looking like they were attending a funeral. Robert's a big guy, works in insurance. Linda's a school teacher, always been sweet, but kind of intense. After ordering coffee, Linda jumped right into it. Sophie was devastated, barely eating, couldn't understand what she'd done wrong. They wanted to know what happened. Turns out Sophie had conveniently left out the part where she flirted with guys and called me pathetic. Told them it was just a misunderstanding about her work and that I'd disappeared without explanation. So I explained everything. The Instagram comment, Sophie telling another guy she was keeping her options open, our kitchen fight where she dismissed my concerns and called me names. Their expressions changed as I talked. She really did that? Linda asked quietly. Robert tried defending Sophie's career and how hard she'd worked to build her following. I pointed out that her career apparently required telling other men she was available while wearing my ring. They kept pushing for me to give her another chance. Counseling, taking a break from social media, whatever it took. I explained this wasn't about social media. It was about respect, and Sophie had shown me exactly what she thought of me. Marriage is about forgiveness, Linda said. This wasn't a mistake. This was Sophie showing me who she really is. After 20 more minutes of them pushing and me explaining why I was done, Robert got frustrated. So that's it? You're going to throw away 2 years because your pride got hurt? Your daughter told another man she was keeping her options open while planning our wedding, then called me pathetic when I asked about it. But sure, this is about my pride. Linda started crying about Sophie being their only daughter. That's when Robert really lost it. Maybe Sophie's better off without you. Walking away instead of fighting shows what kind of man you really are. I stood up and pulled out my wallet. You're right. I'm the kind of man who won't stay with someone who doesn't respect him. Left a 20 on the table and walked out. Got a text from Linda an hour later. We're sorry this got heated. We just love our daughter and want what's best for her. I didn't respond. This whole thing confirmed what I already knew. Sophie's been playing the victim to everyone, making it sound like I vanished over nothing. Her parents had no idea about her actual behavior because she'd painted herself as the confused girlfriend whose crazy fiancé disappeared. But honestly, I'm glad it happened. Now I know for sure that there's no going back. Sophie's not going to change. Her family thinks I'm the problem, and everyone's bought into her narrative about being the wronged party. That's fine. Let them all think whatever they want. I know the truth, and that's enough. She's still out there telling everyone who'll listen that she's keeping her options open. She better hope one of them answers.